Celebrating its 65th anniversary, Spartacus is a movie about a born and raised slave sold to be a gladiator for the entertainment of the crowds, but that all leads to a rebellion against his owners that creates an uprising as they go from town to town seeking to earn freedom in their own homes. Hello and welcome to Cinema, where we focus on a film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of Spartacus. Is it good, is it bad, or somewhere right in the middle? I typically cover new releases on this channel, but since this is one of my favorite films of all time, I found it noteworthy to include it as one of my extra anniversary reviews for you guys, and taking it right in a positive. Spartacus is incredible. It feels sincere with its formality. Created and directed by Stanley Kubrick, who is one of my favorite directors, and this is one of his rare pieces that it's his only film he hasn't written, and so it doesn't necessarily have the Stanley Kubrick signature touch, but written by Dalton Trumbo, the way you follow about this slave, leading about through these characters, it feels so natural, so surreal. The adventure and the aspects of war combines the genres with a great blend of sincerity. With Kirk Douglas leading the cast as Spartacus, he has a form that's well fit for this role, and there's such a formality to his character, but such a sincerity to the way he gives off his role, to the way he speaks about his dialogue, and what we get out of Gene Simmons as Berinia, who is this slave lover that he ultimately falls in love with, but leads on throughout this natural build up toward that point. It blends in a hint of romance while coinciding with a starting point. Looking at Spartacus as he sold out of slavery into being a gladiator, the way you get the training, you get this different form of montages. It's not quick, it's not snappy in the way you expect it to be, but the gradual progression feels proper to the sincerity of the story, being very open to creating all these side characters that still have a significant role to where you're leading on to, sort of the second in command to Spartacus, different parts of the slavery that exploits so much ideas upon its own themes. And this is inspired and based on a book that does some great wonders, even though I haven't read the book, to adapting such a formal idea to the screen. And while it stretches past 3 hours long, it certainly feels like it has the runtime it needs, while not sacrificing any wasted scenes, while building upon this slow progression that still feels like every moment is worthwhile. The scenery is fantastic, again with Stanley Kubrick directing, a great form of cinematography that even if it was made today, the scale is only limited to so many directors choosing to do it in this form of fashion, and it just looks grand by the scope and by the style that they choose to weave throughout the story. That they include Marcus, they have Caesar, they have all these different formal and past leaders of the country that exploit themes of being lazy, of being gluttonous, of showing the different forms of power and trying to take over people through means of slavery by doing all these different things that just manipulate such a grand situation to such a simple issue of slavery and everything that's being expressed throughout this film, that the dialogue feels rather proper. There's a different form of this one guy that instead of wanting to be a soldier, he wants to be a songwriter, and that leads on through many different forms of ideas of expression that exploits and encourages the soldiers while they're going from town to town. And while it feels like a film that would naturally drag on, and it does drag on, it does so progressively within all the mannerisms that it needs, while still gathering soldiers, while showing the passing of time, feeling like it's long-winded, long stretch. There's a point with a baby that feels necessary. There's loss, there's wins, and everything that you could see that you wouldn't expect to get out of this film, you manage to gather up throughout this film that shows this sense of dread, but also victory upon all the forms of emotion where nothing is too heavy, but all the themes are expressed just perfectly throughout all the means of what the directorial intent is intending to be, while having creative substance, while having all the proper dialogue. The writing feels realistic and stretched on within a great form of history. Well, history is a form of thing that I either hit or miss. This one is expressing such substance that I absolutely adore what we're following through with the point of slavery, with the ideas that are going on throughout from beginning to end. It's a long-winded journey that is the epitome of the hero's journey story that I absolutely love. All the ideas, themes expressed, the characterization of what we get out of the Spartacus, and also the romance where it's not forced or shoved in there or doing anything that feels manipulated, expressing any emotions that feels like it's out of place. The melody to the soundtrack in the background is light, but it's still momentous within when it needs to be. So it's used sparingly and used properly. So the way you're following about all these different characters, well, it's not necessarily something I would pick a particular side character saying it's one of my favorite characters of all time. Spartacus is a character that certainly shines through and has a strong romance that certainly exploits the chemistry that is needed on screen. That I would personally say I really love the roles being expressed. I love what they do with the villains. I love what they do with all these different things, because beyond all of it is a simple form of substance that builds upon a sense of realism, a sense of formality that still expresses something so much more meaningful in the more realistic sense. Even if it's still based on a fictional story, it's still compounding upon all these different forms of ideas, all these different expressions of love, of hate, of slavery, of laziness within the villain's world, and everything that shows an act of heroism while also showing the flip side of evil that is trying to take over control, show a sense of power within all these strong leaders going throughout a different expanse of land, throughout Rome, throughout all these different cities, throughout these small towns, and making it feel like it's going about all the proper sets, all the proper settings, making it feel like that such more surreal of a town, but set in the past, almost as if it's not being taken place on Earth, because while yes, it is feeling very grounded, it feels like it could take place in any point of time in a certain region, depending on where it's located. Just the ideal and ways they follow about with the story, despite the runtime seemingly being something that would not be of my favor, it has an expression and comparison to Braveheart, but on a much grander scale that I personally prefer this as a gladiator film over that, where you're getting so much forms of simplicity that's still able to not overcomplicate things, have the sense of sacrifice near the end, and have all the emotions that you need for the sense of a story. That while it's not something you put on at any time and be able to watch all the way through each and every day, it still has something that holds the sense of rewatchability, holds the abilities to follow about all these characters, all these themes, and be clear cut within the way it's building upon those, while having some hidden features to the expressions, how people are acting, something more meaningful behind all of these different acting roles that may have these different layers that if you study this film even more, then you'll be able to catch more and more, or remember some things you had forgotten upon your past watch, that you just be able to revisit with a fresh sense of sentiment, with so much personality being expressed on screen. While it's not the sense of energy that you would expect in a film that's made today, it still bleeds out all the necessary means to an end from all the ideas and just things of expression that are emitted throughout that makes me absolutely love everything from the work from Dalton Trumbo as the writer, Stanley Kubrick as the director, even if it's not his only film that he's never directed. The way you're falling about all these different characters, the way you're falling about Kirk Douglas as Spartacus specifically, is something that means so much more, is so meaningful to me. And while it came at a time that doesn't necessarily speak to me on a personal level, it's not relatable, it still becomes one of my favorite films of all time. It's my third favorite film of all time, more specifically, because of all of the ways they come about and exploit so many senses of expression while being so simple and being the epitome of something that expresses a great sense of perfection. And taking it into the mix elements, the only thing that I would have to say, whether you end up liking it or not, the pacing, of course, will drag for some. I've heard that as some of the main complaint. But of course, I feel there is a great sense of what the story has to offer as the substance. Whether you end up feeling captivated as much, that may be a draw out from what you're getting. And of course, if you are a huge fan of Stanley Kubrick and go into this expecting his signature style to the writing, to the story, you may be a little disappointed because remember, this, while he has directed this film, it's his only film he hasn't written. So there is a disconnect between what it visually looks like compared to what some of his other films look like because of the way that he doesn't have as much control with the writing. But other than all that, those are the two main things that may be the things that detract from your personal experience that I want you to be aware about when you're going into it, or if you want to rewatch this film if you've seen it already, that I highly encourage what you can recognize out of this film now that it's turned 65 years and still ages so well to this time. So that's just my personal review from Spartacus, which is hitting its 60th anniversary. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of Spartacus, or if you are now going to check it out now that I recommended it to you. Do you like this? Do you not like it? Or is it somewhere right in the middle? Make sure to like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you haven't already to join the film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. So that's just all, and make sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.